Juan Donoso Cortés, the 19th century Spanish Catholic political philosopher and diplomat, makes an argument about how all political matters, in a sense, are all inherently theological ones. He does this in his essay on Catholicism, liberalism, and socialism, and his famous speech on dictatorship. It's probably one of the most radical and searching arguments in the entire tradition of Catholic political thought, and it goes something like this. Donoso Cortés's fundamental claim is that every political question, pursued far enough, terminates in a theological one. Now, for him, political questions are things about authority, legitimacy, obedience, sovereignty and the nature of law, the rights of man, the limits of power. And these types of questions cannot be answered without first answering prior questions about human nature, the origin of authority, the existence of God, and the nature of evil. And these prior questions are always theological. Therefore, every political dispute is at its deepest level a dispute about God. The most fundamental of all political questions is whether man is naturally good or naturally fallen. Everything else follows from this. If a man is naturally good, as Jean-Jacques Rousseau argued, then authority is an imposition. Freedom is the highest political value, institutions corrupt rather than discipline, and the less government, the better. If man is naturally fallen, as Catholic theology insists, through the doctrine of original sin, then authority is a necessity. Discipline is a mercy, and unlimited freedom is a recipe for catastrophe. Donoso Cortés argues that every political position implicitly presupposes an answer to this theological anthropological question, whether its holders acknowledge it or not. Liberalism, socialism, and anarchism all presuppose Rousseau's optimistic anthropology, without realizing they're making a theological claim. Catholicism supposes original sin and builds its politics accordingly. Now, what or who is sovereign? Every political system must answer this: the monarch, the people, the constitution, the market, the general will of everybody. Each answer to the question of sovereignty, and that's implicitly an answer to the question of where ultimate authority resides. For Donoso Cortés, ultimate authority can only reside in God, since God alone is the source of all being and order. Every attempt to locate sovereignty elsewhere, in the people, in reason, in history, is a theological error disguised as a political position. It is precisely idolatry, the substitution of a creature for the creator in the place of ultimate authority. Donoso Cortés also wrote in the aftermath of the 1848 revolutions, and saw in them the logical unfolding of the theological errors of the Enlightenment. The revolution against political authority was downstream of the Protestant Revolution against ecclesiastical authority, which was itself downstream of the deeper revolt against God that he saw as the defining spiritual movement of modernity. The political disorder of his era was not a political problem with a political solution, it was a theological problem, the consequence of Europe's progressive abandonment of Catholic doctrine, and it required a theological solution, which was returning to faith. Donoso Cortés also insists that liberalism makes a catastrophic error in its account of evil. Liberalism believes that evil is essentially a political problem, a product of bad institutions, poverty, ignorance, or oppression, and it can be therefore solved by political means, better laws, more freedom, better education. Donoso Cortés argues this is a theological heresy. Evil is not a political problem, but it's a metaphysical and theological one. The consequence of original sin, the disorder of will, the refusal of the creature to orientate itself towards God. No political program can address this, because no political program can touch the will. Only grace can, and grace is not a political category. In the 20th century, German jurist Carl Schmitt, who many people tend to not like, and I kind of agree with him on a lot of the things that people don't like him for, but he makes a similar point in his political theology. And he took Donoso Cortés's argument, as he does with a lot of political philosophers, and he secularized it into one of the most influential theses in modern political theory, that all significant concepts of modern theory of the state are secularized theological concepts. Schmitt means that historically and structurally, the concept of an omnipotent God becomes the concept of an omnipotent legislator. The state of exception in politics mirrors the miracle in theology. Sovereignty in political order mirrors the divine sovereignty in the theological. Schmitt saw Donoso Cortés as a thinker who had grasped this connection with complete clarity and had drawn the correct conservative conclusion from it, that the choice is ultimately between Catholic order and nihilist chaos, with no stable middle ground.